Welcome in, everyone, to another fun history explainer of a famous Delta Force mission. We've been going over a lot of history tidbits on top of the podcast clips. You guys have really been enjoying them. I appreciate that. And it's a lot of fun to take a walk down memory lane with some of the United States' greatest moments in combat. What are we talking about today? Today, we were talking about the death of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
Last night, the United States brought the world's #1 terrorist leader to justice. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead.
The infamous, now deceased leader of ISIS. So a little background before we get into the Delta Force mission that took out the most wanted man in the world. Baghdadi was the head of ISIS, which was obviously the terrorist organization that essentially came out of AQI, Al-Qaeda in Iraq. You had Zarqawi, you had a couple other predecessors, and then you had Baghdadi that kind of took over this massive and created this huge terrorist network in the region, the Middle East region, that was actually so violent and brutal that other terrorist networks were like, you know what, this isn't really for us. It's a true story. Al-Qaeda thought ISIS was too extreme to be dealt with. That should tell you everything you need to know about ISIS. They kidnapped people, they murdered people, they beheaded people, they did brutal, horrific things to completely innocent people. They executed a Jordanian pilot by burning him to death. We are talking about the worst terrorist the world has ever seen. And they kidnapped an American citizen by the name of Kayla Mueller, who's going to factor in here in a little bit. And she was married off to Baghdadi, who at one point in time was actually held in custody in Iraq and then was ultimately released. And as we all know, the scumbag went and became the head of ISIS. So Kayla Mueller was killed in an airstrike, I believe, that was conducted by the Jordanians. She was brutalized by Baghdadi. She was also held, I believe, by Abu Saif, who was the last person that ever had Kayla Mueller, the American citizen, before her death. When she died, ISIS actually emailed pictures of her to her family to taunt and mock them. So these people were animals. They were wild animals. They were dogs. They were savages. They needed to be dealt with in an incredibly brutal and violent and fashion and just put down. So the United States under President Trump ends up making it the only goal in foreign policy when it comes to handling terrorism is we are going to get Baghdadi. It is just like Zarqawi in 2006. We are going to do whatever it takes to get this guy. We're going to put him in the ground. On about October 26th, United States time, October 27th, in Syria, 2019, al-Baghdadi was located about 300 meters outside of a town called Barisha. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that entirely correct. Question is, how did they find him? Now, this is where things get really interesting in the death of al-Baghdadi. Turns out one of the Baghdadi's closest advisors, if you will, was handing information over to the U.S. and our allies, I believe, through Kurds or the Free Syrian Defense Force. One of those two. It's never really been made public what happened, but that person had information directly where Baghdadi was. He was there when the raid happened, and he was able to give the United States a complete rendering of the compound outside Barisha where Baghdadi was held. So President Trump makes the decision that we are going to launch an operation to take out the head of ISIS. Do you feel your patriotism rising a little bit? You're starting to feel a little excited. I certainly know I am. And what happens next is really a testament to how impressive Delta Force is, how impressive the 160th SOAR is, what Rangers are capable of, air support. So we're going to go step by step through the Baghdadi raid as much as I can with the knowledge that I have through open source information and what I've been told from people who have knowledge of what happened to Baghdadi. That's not to say anything being shared here is classified. It's obviously not. I don't have access to that. But let's get into the raid because it is actually absolutely stunning. So A Squadron, so remember, there's 4 squadrons in Delta Force. You have A, B, C, and D. A and B were the first 2. C followed in the early 90s. D was stood up at some point during the GWAT. Those are your 4 squadrons. All equally capable. All of them could have done this job. A Squadron was there. They were picked to do it, much like Red Squadron was picked for the Bin Laden raid. They launch in 8 helicopters from a base in Iraq. They fly with heavy air support. We're talking fighter jets, drones, combat helicopters, and they're in Chinooks. I think they have some Blackhawks, and they're flying, they're hauling ass, if you will, to get to this spot in Syria, Barisha, 300 meters outside Barisha where the compound is. Now, this is again where things are going to get a little dicey because we had to fly, the United States of America had to fly through Russian controlled and Turkish controlled airspace. Coincidentally, nothing happened well, Turkey obviously wouldn't shoot at us, but Russia, for whatever reason, wink, wink, chose to pretend like they didn't see our helicopters coming, or if they did, turn their radars off so no one would know what was happening. Obviously, Russia, not a big fan of Baghdadi either. They wanted him gone just as much as we did. They were almost certainly more than happy to let us do the dirty work and go get him. When we were coming in, the United States A Squadron, 160th SOAR, 75th Ranger Regiment, not me when I say we, I say the United States of America. When the A Squadron operators and all their support and all the pilots and helicopters start coming in, they take anti-aircraft fire from 2 locations. They take gunfire from 2 locations. Those locations are immediately destroyed with air power. They are wiped out, doesn't even slow down anything at all. At this point, the operators hit the ground and they do what is called a call out. Okay. What is a call out? I'm sure many of you have maybe heard that term. I'm sure many of you have not. We're not going to get too much into the tactics here, but during the GWAT, the United States quickly learned that rushing into buildings that might be wired with explosives or people wearing suicide vests might not be the most tactically sound idea. So what we can do is we can control the area. We have it surrounded. We have the airspace is being completely dominated. So we're going to let you know we're here. We're going to get on a bullhorn and we're going to tell you, come out with your hands up, surrender, turn yourself in. That's exactly what they do. And surprisingly, a lot of people come out of the compound. A lot of people come out of the compound, including kids. They were treated very humanely. They were checked for weapons, checked for bombs, moved aside. But you know who's not coming out? Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. He's staying inside. Someone tells the operators that he has a suicide vest and there are people with them. At that point, A Squadron operators make the decision they're going to enter the compound. They blew through a wall, as Trump famously said. They didn't knock on the front door. There was a lot of blasting. A massive gunfight breaks out. I believe 4 enemy combatants are immediately killed upon the A Squadron operators making entrance into the compound. Baghdadi runs into a tunnel system. So they send a robot after him. They send a dog after him. And eventually Baghdadi, realizing he's got nowhere left to go, he's got 2 kids, he detonates a suicide vest and kills the young children that are with him. Now, that should tell you everything you need to know about that scumbag, that instead of surrender or fight like a man and face the U.S. forces face to face, he chose to kill himself and take the lives of 2 children with him. At that point, there's a lot of rubble. So the A Squadron operators, they got to go in and they've got to get DNA. It took about 15 minutes for the DNA to be processed and to be found that, yes, this is Baghdadi. This is who you're looking for. And very quickly, they wrap things up. We now know that we've got Baghdadi, and they get on the helicopters and fly back home, back to Iraq. Well, not home, but back to their launching point in Iraq. And then the United States sends in fighter jets and drones to absolutely pulverize the compound Baghdadi was in, because they did not want it to be a shrine or to have anyone make him a martyr. So that's really it. But the coolest thing about it is, do you know what the name of the operation was? It was Operation Kayla Mueller. It was named by the military after the American citizen that Baghdadi kidnapped and did horrible things with that we're not even going to talk about here. And you know what? At the end of the day, justice might sometimes take a little bit of time. It might take a little bit of time to get the bad guy. It took us, a decade to get bin Laden before the Navy SEALs flew into Abbottabad. Everything doesn't happen in a vacuum. Everything doesn't happen immediately. But what I am very proud of is that when it came time to get Baghdadi, A Squadron operators from Delta Force, the world's best anti-terrorism or counterterrorism unit, got on helicopters in Iraq. The whole thing was over in a few hours. They swooped in. They got the innocent people out of the way. They went inside. They took care of business. As Trump said, there was a lot of blasting. They took out the bad guys. They blew up the people outside the building that were opening fire on them. And it just goes to show, you can run from the U.S., but all it means is you're going to die tired. Baghdadi got exactly what he deserved. I hope you've enjoyed this little walk down memory lane as much as I've enjoyed sharing it and talking about it. Make sure, if you like these history explainers, we're going to keep doing them. We're going to keep going over events. Make sure to like, subscribe, watch the interviews, watch what we're doing. It's a ton of fun. I enjoy it. I know you guys all enjoy it too. So that's it for this one. That was the mission to kill Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in late October 2019. As Trump said, he died like a dog. He actually died like a coward. And worse than a coward, he took innocent lives with him. So that is A Squadron, Delta Force 2019. They got Baghdadi, supported by the 160th SOAR and Army Rangers. Like, subscribe, and make sure you're following along for everything.